Hi everyone, welcome to Belle's Books. I'm Carly and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in June. So I have 6 books to talk to you about today. One of them is an audiobook, one of them I've taken back to the library so I don't have a copy, but I will put a picture here and let's start with that. So I read Cinderella is Dead by Callan Bayron. This is a YA fantasy set in a village that Cinderella used to live in, and it is 200 years after her death. And the village is constructed around the fairy tale of Cinderella. So it is a very patriarchal society. And the premise is that when all girls reach the age of 16, they must go to the palace and attend a ball, like Cinderella did, to meet a husband. And they must be claimed by a man. They don't have much choice in it. And they get 3 attempts to find a husband. And if they don't find a husband in those 3 attempts, they are forfeit. That means they go to the palace and something happens to them. They disappear. They die, basically. So our protagonist is Sophia, and she is a queer girl and she's in love with her best friend, Erin. And she basically wants to live in a world where it's okay to love whoever you want, which, you know, isn't too much to ask really. But in this world, in Cinderella's world, it is extreme misogyny. Now, I really was very excited about this book. I'd heard lots of good things, and the cover is epic, and I just was really excited about it. I really like fantasy that is about fairy tales, and this one, because it was set like a long time after the original fairy tale and it was looking back on that, I was so hyped for this book. I enjoyed it, but it was slightly disappointing because it just felt way too heavy-handed. And I was so gutted because I was really enjoying it for the first probably the first half, but I did feel like, all right, okay, that's a bit much. All right, I get the point. All right, I get what you're trying to say. So like at the beginning, Sophia has to go to the ball because she's turned 16 with her friend Erin, and Sophia is basically just going, "This is bullshit, man. I don't want to do this. We need to escape. Let's escape," to her best friend Erin, who she's in love with. And Erin is very much like, no, we have to live by the rules. We have to do this. We have to get husbands. And she doesn't want to break the rules and become an outcast and lose her family. And Sophia is very much just like, let's smash it all down. So I really liked that about her. But even then, it still felt that she was quite weak, because the only reason that the plot moved on was because she met another girl who then helped her in this like rebellion plan. So I didn't feel like Sophia, the protagonist, was the one that was orchestrating everything. And like I said, it just felt very heavy-handed. Like on every page, it was just like men treating women terribly. There was no kind of middle ground, or there was like a couple of decent men, kind of. Even Sophia's father turned her away when she went a bit rogue, and the only decent guy was a gay guy called Luke, I think. And it was just kind of quite over the top. So Erin gets chosen at the ball, and then on the day after she gets chosen, she's betrothed. Sophia sees her in the marketplace, and she's got a black eye, and her face is all mashed up, and she's just like, "Oh no, it's fine, it's fine." And it's just like, yeah, I get what you're trying to say, but you don't have to, like, he just picked her and then he's gonna smash her face in. It just felt a bit like, that's too much. And every page had something about, this is how it is, there is no choice for girls. And I got it, you didn't need to keep saying it. It was, you know, it was kind of just a bit overkill. But other than that, I really liked the premise. I just felt like it didn't deliver for me. And there was a couple of weird plot points that I was like, what just happened? And why did that happen? Because nothing really came of it. And there was also kind of lots of waiting around, like they're waiting in this place to formulate a plan, but they never actually formulate a plan. They just go and like steam ahead and do nothing that they've actually planned. So yeah, it just fell short for me and I was very disappointed. However, I did kind of enjoy the reading experience. I gave it 3 stars, but it has now put me on a YA or fantasy like binge. I really want to read fantasy is inspired by folklore or fairy tale. So I have just got a couple of books from the library, another Cinderella, Riff, and one Beauty and the Beast. If you have any recommendations for those kind of things, drop them below. The ones I've got is A Curse So Dark and Lonely, Beauty and the Beast, and Stepsister, which is Cinderella. Anyway, so that was kind of disappointing, but a mediocre read. Then I read a short story collection, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Disha Filia. I read this for Jen Campbell's Patreon book club and I adored it. I really loved all of these stories. There are some, now that I've had some distance from it, there are some stories that I had to look back and go, what was that about? But some really strong stories in here, and all of them, really, when I read it, I really enjoyed it. They're all stories about black women who have some kind of link to a church, and some of them are queer, and some of them have, or most of them have secrets, and it's just like snippets of life that, I don't know, the writing was outstanding. I just loved her writing. I will read anything that she writes. I just loved it. I felt like little window peeking into people's lives, and just loved it. So the strongest stories for me were Peach Cobbler, which actually made me think about what is it called? Silver Sparrow by Tayari Jones, which is a book I read earlier in the year and adored. It had similar kind of themes, and it made me think of that. I really loved that. Anything to do with like difficult mother-daughter relationships is kind of my bag, so that Peach Cobbler really was that in a nutshell. Also, When Eddie Levitt Comes, which is about an elderly mother who is suffering from dementia and her daughter is looking after her, and this mother was never very nice to her daughter, didn't look after, well, she kind of looked after her, but she wasn't very nice to her. She gave her a lot of abuse, and she can't remember that now. Also reminded me of Burnt Sugar by Avni Doshi, but it was a completely different story. And the mother is fixated on this dude that she like had a one-night stand with, who was in a band. He's a bit of a rock star, and she keeps talking every day. Today is the day that Eddie Levitt is going to come, and the daughter is like, yeah, all right, and she has to like look after her and make her lunch and make sure someone's sitting with her as she goes out. And it was just kind of heartbreaking because this daughter, you know, is put up with a load of shit from her mum, and then she's the one that now has to look after her while her brother can just ignore the issue. So lots of really interesting family dynamics in here, and like I say, some queer stories. The first one, Eula, was about 2 women who are lovers and best friends, but they're both kind of part of this church, and the expectation is they get a husband, and one of them is still set on getting a husband because she knows that's what she has to do, but the other one's like, but we're kind of doing this every year. They have a meet-up where they basically just go to a hotel room, have lots of amazing sex, and that's it. And she's just like, well, I want to be with you, and her best friend is just like, no, but we have to get husbands. Oh, heartbreaking. Anyway, I would highly recommend this. It was fantastic. Okay, next I read a poetry collection, Night Sky with Exit Wounds by Ocean Vuong. I really enjoyed this as well. Some of the poems, I've mentioned this before about poetry. I sometimes struggle with poetry. Hang on, Dan's asking for, yes?
Dinner's going to be just serving up now.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's my dinner. All right. I'll talk about this, then I'll go and eat my dinner. Sometimes I struggle with poetry because I feel like I don't know enough and it goes over my head. Some of these I did feel like that, but the poems that I really enjoyed, or that I really kind of, it struck a chord with me, were the ones that were about like queer experience, and I found them so kind of heart-wrenching and emotional. I really enjoyed them, and some of them are quite hard to read because this is a mixture of poems about the queer experience and being a refugee or an immigrant in America. So Ocean Vuong is from Vietnam, and I think he and his family escaped Vietnam when he was a very small child. So there's poems in here about Vietnam, about the Vietnam War, about war crimes, about mixed heritage, and those I felt like I don't know enough about like the Vietnam War. I did start Googling, and I was looking into the history of it because I just felt like I didn't know anything. And there's one poem in here, oh now I can't remember what it is, but it references like I think it's an escape where lots of people were being evacuated from Vietnam, and there was some kind of signal and it was a song, White Christmas, I think, was being played over the radio as like a signal, and so that song permeates the poem, and I found that incredibly emotional and really eerie. But the ones that I marked out that I found most kind of affecting, I like the way he plays with form in here. So Seventh Circle of Earth, I'll hold that up, is a bit of context up here. So it says, on 27th of April 2011, a gay couple, Michael Humphrey and Clayton Capshaw, was murdered by immolation in their home in Dallas, Texas. And that was a piece in a newspaper, I think. Then this is the poem, and it's blank, and it's got footnotes, and so the poem is written in footnotes, and I thought that was so clever. And again on the other page, it's just like blank, using white space, using all of this to show absence, to show all of that disappearing, their lives disappearing, their home disappearing in fire. And the footnotes are the poem about simple things like touch and their living together and their experiences, and it was just heartbreaking. So that one, and also Into the Breach, right? Again, another bit of context at the top here. This is a quote. It says, "The only motive that there ever was to keep them with me as long as possible, even if it meant just keeping a part of them," by Jeffrey Dahmer. I knew that name, but I don't know why. I googled it, and I went into one kind of, you know, when you go down a rabbit hole of investigation, because I knew nothing about, I just knew him, whose name, he's a serial killer. I knew nothing about him. And then I had to look up what he did. It's horrendous. Don't go there. If you don't know, just stay ignorant, because it has scarred me. He basically, he was a gay man, and he could not deal with his sexuality, and so he killed lots of men in terrible ways and did terrible things to their bodies. So this poem was particularly emotional as well. I'm coming. It's my dinner. So I will talk about the other books when I'm back from my dinner. This was excellent. If you haven't read it, do go and read it. It's fantastic. I am back from eating my dins. We had tapas. It was amazing, but very spicy. And then I got the neck sweats. Do you get that when you eat spicy food? And then like I had to put my hair up because it just was way too hot, but it was very fit. Dan is an excellent cook. Anyway, do you want to hear about my dins? No. You want to hear about the books? Yes. The next book I read was an audiobook, and it was On the Red Hill by Mike Parker. I picked this up as a recommendation from the lovely Simon, and I was very enviously looking at his vacation photos from when he stayed at the place that this book is set in. So it is about a Welsh kind of farmhouse. It's an old farmhouse, the landscape, and it's about the people that live there. So Mike Parker now lives at this house, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong because my Welsh is not very good, but I think it's called Tregoch, or I want to say T. Like it sounds like a T because I listened to the audiobook, and when he was saying it, it sounded like he was saying Tregoch or Tregoch, I don't know. Anyway, but it's written with an R because I now follow them on Instagram. I have no idea how to pronounce it. Anyway, this amazing place that they live in. So this is about Mike and his partner, Preds. And they encountered this wonderful place through the people that lived there previously, Reg and George, who were also a gay couple. And I think from what I remember, their first encounter was like at Reg and George's wedding, I think. And they got to know them and learned all about their lives, and that's what this book is. It's about Reg and George, about their lives, coming together as a couple. And they got together, I think, in the 40s, so before homosexuality was legal. And it's about them living in different places but finally settling at this wonderful farmhouse in Wales. I'll link their Instagram down below because it's stunning if you haven't seen it, which you probably have. It's amazing. And also now they do a holiday let, so that's why Simon was there, because he went and stayed in this beautiful, it's like glamping. There's a tent in their back garden. I really want to go there. So the book is about Reg and George, about their lives, and it's about Mike and Preds and their lives, and how they all came together in this house because Mike and Preds, I think, moved in with them for a certain time when Reg and George were older and their health was declining. And then Reg and George bequeathed the house and the land to them, so they live there now. And it was I just loved it. I thought it was beautifully written. There is some stunning nature writing in here. And because I listened to the audiobook and it was read by Mike, I really liked his voice and like the tone of it, and it was very relaxing to listen to. And I listened to it a lot when I was on the way to and from work. And when I walk to work, I have to go across a common. And that was lovely, being like on a piece of like ground, not wasteland, but this big open meadow. There's lots of trees around it, listening to his descriptions of this Welsh landscape. And so it felt very fitting. And I really enjoyed it. I loved the audiobook, would highly recommend that. I loved listening to him read it. And it put me in mind of Nigel Slater when he reads his work. It was that same kind of dulcet tone that's very soothing and calming, and also because he's writing about the natural landscape and the natural world and that connection. The chapters, which I can't remember now, but I remember them being I think they were like the directional points, so north, east, south and west, and the seasons. And it felt very like just grounded in that human connection to the natural world, and I'm all about that. So that was really lovely to read, and I just enjoyed it so much as a listening experience. I loved learning about their lives, and the way that they kind of saw similarities in themselves with Reg and George. Found it fascinating to learn about, Reg and George's relationship, which was kind of illegal when they first got together, and the way that they managed it. Like there was an aspect of that, like with George, was quite controlling over Reg, and so it wasn't just, oh, look at all of these wonderful people. There was a little bit of a darker side to it, and I found that quite interesting. But it's just an insight into people's lives, which is always going to be interesting. And I absolutely loved it. Would highly, highly recommend. Then, I think this is the, oh no, you can see my green light. The last one I read for my Pride-themed reading, The Transition Baby by Tori Peters. I have lots of thoughts about this. I've just finished it, right? I have lots of thoughts about this, and I don't quite know how to articulate them all. This book, I really enjoyed it, first of all. I really enjoyed it. I was very compelled. I wanted to turn the pages quickly, but I found the writing quite dense, both in terms of language. So this is going to sound really stupid. The sentences were very full of words. there was a lot there to unpack, and sometimes I had to read a sentence over and again to go, wait, what is she saying? The writing was quite dense. Also, there are a lot of ideas in here that I had to step back and think about in terms of gender, because this book, you all know what it's about, it's been everywhere. This book is about an attempt at queer family making. So we have Reese, who is a trans woman, who is asked by her ex, Ames, who is now a man, but previously was a trans woman, he detransitioned, to come into this three-way like parentage kind of thing. So Ames has got his girlfriend pregnant, and he is unsure about how he feels about raising a child as a father. He doesn't see himself as a father. So he wants Reese in the mix to help him be a parent in this like queer family setup. So there really isn't like not much plot to this book. It's very much a book about looking at these ideas, looking about gender, looking at gender performativity, cultural expectations, and the way that we have these like ideas embedded in us from childhood. So I found it fascinating. There were lots of things in here that I didn't understand, and I had to kind of look things up, like both terminology and just like general like ideas and stuff. So I would recommend anyone read this. The thing that I was worried about was because like I have zero information. I know nothing about trans lives. So it was one of the reasons I wanted to read this is because I wanted like to learn more. But the thing I was worried about was the fact that it was about a character who had detransitioned. Now, I had always understood detransitioning as something that transphobic people use as a counter reason why people shouldn't be trans. So I was worried about that, and I was like, hey, how is a trans author writing about detransitioning? Again, my ignorance, I knew nothing about it. So that was really fascinating, because the premise is that the character Ames, or who was previously Amy, didn't detransition because he felt like he wanted to be a man again. It exposes how difficult it is to be a trans person, and there's like both sides in this. So mostly it's talking about trans women, but there are references to trans men. So I found that a really fascinating idea. I learned a lot from this book. Like I said, I had to Google a lot and go, wait, what's that? Because there's no kind of explanation. I saw an interview with Tori Peters where she'd said, I wanted to write a book that didn't explain things because it was for the audience was trans people, so that they would read it and understand what it meant. People like me who do not understand have to do your own work and investigate and find out what stuff meant. Totally fine. And that was really great. I thought that was important, because I read this to learn. I did learn a lot, and I'm still mulling over. Like I said, I don't really know how to articulate it. There were some things that I felt like, because the language was quite dense and the sentences, like I say, were very full, I felt like sometimes it was just like, oh, this is too much. A little bit overwritten maybe, but yeah. And like I said, there was no plot really. It was just the interactions of these three people. I found it really kind of interesting to see how they all worked around each other, but they weren't very likable characters. Like both Ames and when she was Amy, and Reese were kind of like shitbags. They weren't very nice people. And the thing that I didn't understand was why Ames invited Reese to be a mother to his unborn child. Because when you get to know their relationship, Reese is a bit of a, it's not very nice. So I found that really interesting as well, to, these characters which are deeply flawed, and I just didn't really like them. But yeah, there was just so much in here. Like, I'm still mulling it over and I keep thinking about it, but I appreciate that, and I would like to read more by Tori Peters, so I would highly recommend this. Definitely give it a go. Lots of sex in here as well. So yeah, fascinating. Do pick it up. Right, I'm running on too long. What else? The last book I have to talk to you about is one that I didn't read for Pride. I read it for my PhD. It's a reread, and I'm going to do a separate video about this as part of my experimental literature series. This is Happy by Nicola Barker. This is a utopian turned dystopian novel. It is about a future where people are reconfigured to have some kind of technology both in their heads and outside of them, so that they have like a computer with them all the time and they can look up information. It also monitors their emotions. So in this future scenario, people are not allowed to be emotional, and if you get too emotional, it shows on your sensor, which nothing is ever really described. It's very ambiguous. So you kind of have to draw your own conclusions about what things look like, because there's no detail there. I like that though. And our protagonist is Mirror A, and she is having a bit of a meltdown. So she's abiding by the rules of this new society, which is you must always stay in the present moment. You must not get emotional. And you must think of it's a utilitarian kind of premise. You must always think of the everyone else that you're living with, because if you get emotional, then it has an impact on everybody else. So there's that, and there's also you're not allowed to put too much importance on yourself as a subject, as your identity. So she's a musician and she plays the guitar and other instruments. And she keeps questioning things but then she goes, oh, but I mustn't question the system or the new path, which is the society that it's called. But she does keep questioning it, and then she gets angry at herself, and then it keeps going on. And as she has this kind of breakdown, the text also breaks down. I'll just show you an example. So this is an experimental novel because the text does different things in terms of the way that white space is used. So you'll have gaps like this in the page. Also, let me show you one of my favourite ones. Shapes are made out of the white space on the page. Like this one, where a guitar is formed with the absence there. And then kind of as Mirror starts to break down, some weird shit happens on the page as well. Like this. I like this very much. So you've got pictures, and pictures are made from words. The font changes, there's colour in here. So she makes a cathedral with her mind, and she's basically causing chaos and being a massive rebel, which you're not allowed to do in this society. So that's the kind of the basic plot, is that as she breaks down, the text breaks down. But then you realise that actually, is it bad? Is what is happening to her bad? Because she's coming into her own identity and her own subjectivity. She's affirming herself as the protagonist. This is a bit meta. And there's instances in here where characters are like, you're making me a character in your story, and I don't want to be a character in your story. And there's instances where she's narrating her life, but you don't know who she's narrating it to. And for me, it seems like she's talking to the reader. So there's where the white space is used is that she leaves gap and she asks a question, and it's like she's asking it to the reader. So I find that fascinating. It goes without saying, I would recommend this book. I'm going to do a separate video on all of the aspects about this, because you can see I've got lots of things to say about it. But I love Nicola Barker, and she is one of those authors that does get meta in her writing, but I'm here for that. I love it. So I would highly recommend this, and it's only a short novel. Like, it's 200 odd pages, but like I say, because the text does weird stuff, like there's some pages where it's not really things for you to read. It's kind of like, look, pictures and weird stuff. So it won't take you long to read, and I want people to read more experimental literature because it's amazing. So I will do a proper video on this very soon, but that is the last book that I read in June. So 6 books. I'm quite pleased with that reading month. Talk to me in the comments below if you've read any of these, particularly if you've read Detransition Baby, because I want to talk about that, because I feel like my brain is on fire with lots of new ideas and information, and any more recommendations of books like this, please. Next up, I'm going to be doing my mid-year freak out / half-year check-in, best books of the year so far, all of that gubbins. So I will see you next week for that video. Bye everyone.